Okay, y'all, third time is the charm, right? We're gonna make it through this. Y'all are like, well, I don't know what's going on, Miss Larson. Let me tell you, the janitors came in and they were moving desks and they were drilling holes in my wall, and I was so, it was an issue, okay? So I'm gonna try and rush through this because I've said this a bunch of times already, okay? So what we're doing today is we're talking about atmosphere. Now, you really only need to know about atmosphere that it's air, okay? You don't need to know the 5 different levels, the stratosphere, the what all that stuff, okay? What I do need you to know is the Earth-Sun relationship, okay? So weather is the condition that is going to be caused by the Earth-Sun relationship as well as climate. And weather is going to be the condition of the atmosphere in one place during a short period of time. Okay, so the weather this week of San Antonio is it's supposed to rain. However, the climate is going to be the weather patterns that an area typically experiences during a long period of time. So the weather this week is it's going to rain, but the climate is that San Antonio is a dry, hot place. Okay, so weather short term, climate long term. And the reason we have this is because of the Earth's tilt and its rotation. So the axis is an imaginary line that runs through the center of the Earth, but our axis isn't up and down. It's not straight up. Instead, it's going to be tilted at 23.5, and this is going to cause different weather as the sun, which is over here, hits different parts of the Earth, okay? So a rotation of the Earth on its axis lasts 24 hours. That's a day. A rotation is 24 hours. A revolution, on the other hand, is a trip around the sun. And so that is going to take us a full 365.5 days. It's half a day because that's why every 4 years we have a leap year, which adds a day on to February. So it's gonna 4 times a year, the sun is going to directly hit 3 different areas of the Earth, okay, as we revolve around it. On an equinox, the sun is directly going to face the equator, and that's going to cause days and nights to be equal on the equator. A solstice, on the other hand, is when the Earth's rays directly hit the Tropic of Cancer or Capricorn. Now I have a picture on the other side. So the Tropic of Cancer is going to be the northernmost point on Earth that receives direct rays of sun. Obviously, we are still getting sun up in the northern hemisphere, up in North America, up in Texas. Texas is above the Tropic of Cancer, okay? But this is where above the Tropic of Cancer, the sun will never be directly overhead at noon, okay? So on the tropic, on June 22nd, we have the summer solstice, and this is going to be the start of summer, obviously. And then on December 22nd, the sun is directly going to hit the Tropic of Capricorn, and that's the southernmost point on Earth that receives direct rays of sun, okay? And that's going to cause the start of winter. On the other hand, we have the equinoxes in September and March, where again, days and night and 24 hours. So going back to the solstice, the Tropic of Cancer, like I said, marks the beginning of summer for the northern hemisphere, and the Tropic of Capricorn in December starts the beginning of winter for the northern hemisphere. And I know you're like, Miss Larson, you said that was December 22nd. It is winter long before December 22nd. The weather and the climate certainly act like winter before December 22nd, but that is when officially we mark the start of winter, okay? So there are going to be a couple different things that are going to affect your climate. And now we call that get well. Let me see if I can get my pen out here. So well, W-E-L-L. And you're looking at this and you're like, Miss Larson, that's a lot more letters. That's more letters than well. But so we combine wind and ocean currents. So we have wind and ocean currents in parentheses, elevation, latitude, and landforms. Okay, so that's how we say well. Oops. Goodness gracious. So the first thing we're going to talk about is latitude. So latitude is above or below the equator. So latitude, remember, is flatitude. Your lines are going east-west. From the equator, your lines of latitude are going to increase. The equator is at 0 degrees. Your tropics are at 23. And even though, that is a lovely circle, even though your tropics are north and south, they're still 23.5 degrees above the equator. The Tropic of Cancer is 23.5 degrees north. Tropic of Capricorn is 23.5 degrees south. Okay, so going up, going north, your latitude increases, but also going south, your latitude increases. We don't have negative numbers. We just have positive ones. Okay, so the farther away from the equator at 0 degrees you get, the colder it gets. So this is more of the equator here. Remember, we have 2 circles. Don't open my door. Sweet Jesus. Seriously.
Is she already?
Huh?
Is she already?
Okay. So above the tropics, we have the Arctic and the Antarctic Circle, and that's going to be at 66.5 degrees north. And this is going to be your poles, your North Pole and your South Pole. So the higher your latitude is, the colder it gets. Okay? That's why it is colder in Wisconsin than it is here in Texas. We also have elevation. So if you look at this picture, you can see it's Africa. You have your little giraffe here. In the foreground, it's all hot and dry. But if you notice in the background, we have this mountain. Now, the top of the mountain is snow. You're like, Miss Larson, there doesn't snow in Africa. Well, the top of the mountains, it does. Because as your elevation increases, your atmosphere, not your atmosphere, just the atmosphere in general, is going to get thinner. And as it gets thinner, it's going to get colder. And that's going to allow it to snow at the top of mountains, even when it's super hot down below them. Okay. We also have wind patterns. So prevailing winds are going to be things like the southwesterlies, the northeast trade winds. You don't need to know this, but just know that prevailing winds are winds that blow in fairly consistent patterns. And then doldrums are going to be at the equator. It's areas that don't really get a lot of wind, okay? They just doesn't make it there for some reason. So then we combine wind patterns with ocean currents. So currents are cold and warm rivers of seawater that usually flow in circular patterns. So you can see here it's flowing in patterns. Red means hot, obviously. Blue means cold. And this is going to affect the climate of coastal areas. It's not really going to affect the insides of these continents. It's only the coastal area, okay? It's only where that ocean hits. But it's going to bring water in. Fun fact, the Mediterranean is right here. This is where a bunch of rich, fancy people go and resort in like the winter. And you're like, well, Ms. Larson, that's kind of like the same latitude as like Wisconsin. Why would people go there in the winter? It's going to be cold. Well, because of ocean currents, I'm going to move to another pen because there's too much red going on. Because we have the Mediterranean Sea right here, it takes in warm water from the equator and it sends it right in here. So even though the latitude of the Mediterranean is fairly cold and fairly high, it's going to be warm there because of the ocean currents, okay? The rest of Europe, like England, for example, cold, rainy, wet, gross, okay? And then the very last thing we're going to talk about is going to be landforms. So really what it's talking about is areas around large bodies of water have less dramatic weather changes. That's because the wind is going to come up off the water and it's going to cool it down. But really what I want you guys to know is the rain shadow effect. So the rain shadow effect happens on mountains. And what happens is it's on one side, you're going to have water, and the prevailing winds are going to take the water, the atmosphere, it's going to be full of water, it's going to rise. And as it rises, remember, it gets cold. Well, when it gets cold, it rains, right? Or it snows. Because the atmosphere or the weather wind has to rise to meet the top of the mountain, it's going to get too cold, and so everything is going to fall on the top of the mountain. This is going to cause a bunch of greenery on one side of the mountain. Okay, it's super green. Yay, green. Okay. That, on the other hand, though, on the leeward side, the side that's not getting wind, is going to cause a rain shadow effect. So what this means is this is all going to be desert. My little yellow desert. Okay. This is going to be super important. I almost guarantee you that I am always going to test you on the rain shadow effect. Okay, so what it means simply is that one side of the mountain is going to be green, full of rainforest, full of forest, super green, and the other side is going to be a desert. Okay, this especially happens in South America, especially because of the Amazon rainforest and the Amazon river. It's going to be flopped because the river is going to be on the leeward or the windward side of the mountain, which is going to be over here now. But yeah, so again, windward, the side of the mountain facing the ocean, it's going to receive rain. The leeward side of the mountain facing land is going to be hot. It's going to have dry air. It's going to have a desert, pardon me. And then the rain shadow is going to be an area, a dry area on the leeward side of the mountain. Okay. So these are your notes for today. What we are going to do now is I'm actually going to show you the assignment for today. Oops, that's not what I wanted. So your assignment for today is going to be extreme weather. So what you were going to do is you were going to pick and research a natural disaster of your choice. It cannot be Hurricane Katrina because I did that one as my example. You're going to create an informal poster. You're going to do this in your digital notebook. So you're going to write a summary that should include an introductory paragraph that summarizes where, when, and what happened, as well as a photo. And I want you to tell me how the natural disaster happened, what the consequences of the disaster were, and what is the long-term impact of the disaster. So you can see here, this is my paragraph talking about, I did 4. So I did my introductory, I did my what is it, I did my what happened, what was the impact, the consequences, category 5, estimated 1,800 people died, and then my prediction for the future is that many people leave the damaged areas and move to a nearby city like Houston, but most will return and rebuild their home and community. This does not have to be factual. Again, your prediction, this is what you think is going to happen, okay? So this is your assignment. If you have questions, make sure you ask, but otherwise, this is all I have for you today. I did go through it fairly quickly because, again, this is the 3rd time I've done this, but if you have questions, please ask, all right? Thank you all so much, and I will see you on Friday. Bye.